Okay, well, let's try and have some fun. We know Arsenal are going through a bit of a moment, but I don't want everything we do around Arsenal to be so energy sapping. So we're going to try and bring some energy. We're going to try and get excited about this Carabao Cup game. I can't believe the words come out of my mouth. We're going to try and get excited about the transfer window, and we're going to try and get, I don't know, some hope injected into this season, because despite everything, we're weirdly in no worse a position than we actually were pre-international break. That's a funny thing about football sometimes. So we're going to break that all down. Of course, I'm here with Sheroy. Before we bring Sheroy, I want to introduce our guest. It is Jack. And I was going to throw your surname out there, but there's no point. It's Jack. How are you, Jack?
I appreciate you having me on.
Welcome, mate. Welcome. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Recovered from the weekend. I had a work party, 2 hours after kickoff, and it took me a good 3 hours to get me out of that hotel room. I was in no mood for partying.
I hear it. It's I'm the opposite. I saw the result. Well, I was to watch the game. I was famously on the watch along, and I say famously because a few clips of us celebrating Robertson red cards did the rounds. All I had to do was go out after that. I went, right, friends, where are we? What are we doing? Sheroy, was that your antidote?
I was meant to be at a Christmas party dinner thing, and after the result, I just thought, you know what? Nothing would make this feel better than a nice old-fashioned. So I get there, sit down, look at the menu, and my mate says, "Oh, this place doesn't serve alcohol, right?" So that was that was my Saturday evening. So I settled for a steak instead. But yeah, that was originally going to be my MO.
Fair enough. Yeah, the place I went to definitely served alcohol, but there we go. Look, everyone, let me introduce Jack a bit more. So we've worked together for 2 years now, Jack?
I think so, yeah. Wow.
Yeah, that's flown by. And I really should have asked you this pre-podcast, but you don't mind me telling them what you do, how we work together, no?
No, go for it.
Actually, why should I? I'll just give you the headline. He, running social media at DR Sports, of course. I've been on DR before. We've worked closely together. But mate, just tell them a bit about yourself. And you are a massive Arsenal fan, and obviously you've got your TikTok stuff you're doing. You're wanting to do more in this space. So yeah, man, tell them more about you.
Yeah, just joined DR, obviously the whole AFTV family, best part of 2 years ago. I think just before Arsenal fell off 2 title races ago. Whether that's got anything to do with me, I don't know. But yeah, doing the socials, the clips behind the scenes, and now just trying to make that slow transition into doing my own stuff, some content. And, when you've got people like James to give you opportunities like this, then it's making it a lot smoother. Yeah, just doing the TikTok. If anyone has seen or will see, I appreciate all the love on that.
Everyone go follow. We'll put the links in the description below, as we always do, but definitely go follow Jack and the great coverage on TikTok, because you do football as well, not just Arsenal, right?
Yeah. Just trying to be that guy in the space that hopefully is the unbiased Arsenal fan out there. But I mean, everyone will be the judge of that, not me.
You had an Mbappe TikTok go viral or something, didn't you?
Yeah, he got hacked on Twitter.
Yes,
I think all the tweets got taken down in a couple of hours, but I managed to just show them off and have a little laugh at them, which did pretty well. But yeah,
great work, man. Sheroy, look, I love AFTV and I love doing the watch-alongs, but dare I say, you probably missed a good one. This was a good one to miss, is what I'm trying to say. How was it watching from a distance? Me arguing with Goonerverse about Ethan Nwaneri and red cards being celebrated. I mean, there were a few clips that I thought, here we go.
I thought you were going to lose it.
I nearly did. I actually regrettably got a little bit more mad than I wish I had.
But I also understand why, and I'm not saying that because of what Goonerverse said. Everyone knows that I'm mates with him. I get along really well with him. I think everyone's reaction to that, whether it was in fan cams, whether it was the evening when they go out, whatever it is, it stems from the performance that the guys put in.
Yeah,
we were frustrated with what we had seen, and that was going to manifest itself in whatever conversation we had afterwards, right? And I'm glad that you began this by saying let's try and inject some level of energy into this, because if we are just going to focus on what went wrong and what has been going wrong without attempting to offer any solutions or attempting to see the other side of the coin, then this is going to be a bad listen.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, the football has to be played. This isn't Football Manager where you can, quit and restart. The football games have to be played. Before you restart, you've got to finish this season. So you may as well try and fix the one you're in. And that's kind of the beauty of football. It kind of forces, especially for probably young people going up, it kind of forces discipline and this idea of see something through, and also that you can't just, you don't get it all your own way. I think it's a sport that actually probably teaches people quite a lot, actually, about life in quite a weird way.
It's been teaching me for over 20 years now.
Yeah, for sure.
It's been teaching me that for a long time. I think I've learnt my lesson, bro.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was saying earlier, I think I'm probably maybe the worst age to be an Arsenal fan. I think I'm 24, so I sort of skipped the Invincibles now when I was too young, and then spent my school days trying to get Bakary Sagna in, them combined 11s used to do with your mates, and my Chelsea fans, Liverpool fan mates, trying to get Sagna in there, maybe. Koscielny over Terry, he's off form, maybe, but yeah.
I know what you mean.
My earliest memory maybe was that Birmingham final when I was, 12?
Oh, man.
Right, so that was painful for me because I'm 29, so that 5 years prior was basically... Well, no, not really. So I became a fan in 2007, 6-7 season was my first. So I quite literally, Champions League final was the first game I remember. So I think I'm the curse, actually. Basically,
you can have that trophy if you want.
What's that? Sorry,
you can have that trophy if you want, as long as it's not me.
Well, I think that is a tag I'm going to have to carry, quite frankly. And I remember the Carling Cup final because it was such a thing. Arsenal haven't won a trophy for so long. And it was just like really hanging over us. So losing that final was devastating. But then winning against Hull was elation. And, we've had the taste of amazing FA Cups, but it's like, can we get that just that more, that the pinnacle of the game? We're going to discuss in this podcast how we can do that. But no, the weekend was interesting. I mean, I was... Look, I've said this on Forever, so I don't want to go on and on about it. I love Goonerverse to bits. And actually, I think what's a shame sometimes when these clips do the rounds, people maybe just see the side that you actually don't maybe always want people to see. That's been true of me. That's been true of lots of people. Goonerverse is a teddy bear. He's like one of the nicest, sure. He's one of the nicest people in the world. And you, Jack, sorry, of course. I mean, you work with him. And actually, also weird, and actually why I was a bit annoyed with myself was, I promise you, the result actually didn't even get to me that much. The Fulham one did. The Newcastle one did. But I was just like... I just kind of came to expect it of this team a little bit, and I sort of resigned to it from about the 60th minute onwards. You still hope, you still support, whatever. I just felt that I needed to. I feel we have a responsibility as a fan base to protect the youngsters. So I felt like I kind of wanted to just say my piece on that bit there. But then I remember the clips doing the round of the Liverpool fans were sharing the clips of the the reaction on AFTV to the red card. Mm-hmm. And do you know what I find weird about it is, like, this is where I think football is this is the banter that I think we do quite well on social media. There's actually nothing wrong with Arsenal fans being happy that something is going against Liverpool. Like, they're the people we're trying to chase. But I just remember in the moment when it was read out, I read it out and people got happy. I was just relax, everyone. We are not winning. And I've been clipped before. You're just like, stop, please. This is not my first rodeo, okay? And so I dare say I handle myself a bit better in this one than perhaps previous ones.
Liverpool fans would have done exactly the same if they were in our position and one of our players got sent off. And to be honest, the Liverpool fans in my WhatsApp groups were like, oh my God, Robbo's just been sent off and there's a whole match to play. So they were feeling it too. But the fact of the matter is, they look like a team with 11 on the pitch, and they look like a team that wanted to win the game throughout. And this is where we as Arsenal fans, having seen our team not be able to do that with 10 men on more than one occasion this year, that's where we just have to say, well, hats off to you, because that performance made you look like the real deal just as much as a lot of the wins beforehand. It showed a level of intent, showed a level of ability. Fair play.
Yeah, totally agree. Look, Jack, let's get into the nuts and bolts of it. Arsenal fundamentally need to improve. It's such a simple, stupid piece of analysis, but we fundamentally need to get better. And we have 2 more weeks of doing it with the players we've got. The Carabao Cup, I mean, we'll talk about the importance of that, but we've got a game on Wednesday and Arsenal need to level up on that. What do you want to see from Arsenal? What do you want to see from Arteta? What do you want to see in terms of changes? What can we put down as like kind of tangible changes? Not just we want chance creation up, but what do we want as tangible changes to this Arsenal team that we think are going to improve things?
I think for me, it's bravery. I mean, I looked at a point in the game on Saturday and saw that we had Rice as the 6 with Saliba and Gabriel behind, and it was still conservative. I mean, with Everton pushing one, maybe 2 players forward on counters, and we're sitting with Saliba, Rice, Gabriel. That's more than enough to cover. So then just commit some bravery. And then going back to the whole Nwaneri sub, I'd have loved to have seen Nwaneri come on for Mika Moreno. Maybe inject that positivity, have Odegaard in a bit the creative one, and almost have Nwaneri with him as well. But I think it's just that little bit, we'll go like for like. We don't want to change the system. We don't want to change sort of the patterns of play. Let's just do like for like swaps and see what that brings us. I just want to see that, if they're throwing one player forward at you, then, can we be a bit braver maybe? But I don't know what you guys thought about it.
Yeah, great point. Sure.
James, when did we do that pod where we said, I think we came up with a list of like 5 things that we wanted Arsenal to improve after the international break to get the season back on track or whatever. And Jack, no word of a lie, one of them was, let's try and be a bit more unpredictable to the extent that maybe we could play Odegaard and Nwaneri together. A little bit more bravery and a little bit more incision going forward. Mm-hmm. And it told against Fulham, and it told again there. I don't know. I mean, it's only just aired a few hours ago. Did any of you catch Thierry Henry on Monday Night Football talking about that?
I've heard it's brilliant. No, what did he say?
It's not anything that the vast majority of us haven't said. But obviously, when Sky Sports do it, they have the benefit of being able to use the actual footage and stop and zoom in. But ultimately, he shows numerous instances of Bukayo Saka doing exactly as Jack says, being incredibly brave on the ball, not just beating one, but sometimes having to beat 2 or 3, but realizing he can't beat 4 or 5, turning around to look for an option, and the only option for him is behind him, as opposed to in front of him, and more often than not, it's Odegaard. All right? You're looking at players in the central sort of area of the final third that aren't darting into the box, i.e. aren't being that brave, aren't taking that chance. But then he goes through the equivalent on the left-hand side, and he looks at what happens when either Rice picks up the ball or Zinni picks up the ball. I think he's focusing on the Man United game in this footage. Martinelli's on the touchline. There's only ever one person on him, as we know, because people are very preoccupied with our right-hand side. So sometimes Martinelli's left completely unmarked. Sometimes there's one person there. Martinelli gets the ball. He compares it directly to what happens on the other flank. The lack of defenders around him, but also the lack of bravery to try and skin your man. And it happens again and again and again. And it's not just Martinelli. I'm not just going to focus on him as the winger. He shows exactly how the midfield contributes to that too. Very often when there is a pass that could go straight to a winger, which Thomas Partey is very good at, in fact, getting the ball straight to the winger and sort of skipping out the middleman, we play the safer 6-yard ball to someone who's slightly closer when the ball to the winger is on. That level of bravery there, taking on your man one-on-one and playing the difficult pass, that is something that I've seen us be very good at. So I know it's within our locker. This isn't me saying, oh, these guys definitely can't do it. This is me saying they haven't done it recently, but I know they can, and I don't know why they aren't.
Yeah, I totally agree with it. I mean, two seasons ago, it was the left-hand side that was functioning and the right-hand side maybe lacked something while Ben White was getting used to the position, and things have changed so drastically. And that's because Bukayo Saka's come on leaps and bounds, for sure. That is because we've lost Xhaka. That's because Zinni's not been quite as good. And there's quite a few reasons. Fundamentally, I think we are less brave, and I think that is as a team. I think that's tactically. I think that's the individuals as well. I feel when you talk about bravery, we used to slice through the middle with a pass, and then we'd follow that pass. So maybe go into a Jesus, and it might be Zinni who's played the ball into a Jesus, but Xhaka's run beyond, or it might be a Xhaka who's played the ball, and Martinelli's made a dart outside, inside, whatever it might be. There was just constant rotations and triangles and movements. I so often feel like, and I know the Arsenal players don't do this because we're talking about the highest level of professional football, but I just feel like there's a lot of admiring passes. Pass it, it's gone, now let me look around, what's next? Sometimes football is doing something and seeing where it ends you up, not planning it 2-3 passes ahead. sometimes it's, and Jack Wilshere was the king of this. Like Jack Wilshere, I'm sure there's better, like Lionel Messi. But at Arsenal, Jack Wilshere was always so good. He'd get the ball and he's pressed, and then drop of a shoulder, he's gone. And then he looks up and there's someone else, and he's gone. And he probably wasn't thinking 2-3 moves ahead, but it's quality, it's brave, it's whatever. And then the game's opened up. Cazorla was great at that. And I just feel we've really, really missed that from kind of all areas of the pitch, that ability to just, let me just show I'm better than that individual, and then see how the game has then developed from that point. We've lacked that since 22-23, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think for me that was something where, like, I thought we'd developed the team more in that way. You talk about 2 seasons ago where it was so attacking, the interchange, and it was almost like a front five at times. See, I thought when we signed Declan Rice, that was going to be the cover. It was we've got the attack in front five, we score loads of goals, we're free flowing, but we're kind of getting caught on counters a little bit. Sometimes there's just not that protection. So I thought the whole thing would be, in comes Declan Rice, sits as the 6, the system says it is, but now if we do lose the ball with Odegaard or Martinelli, we've got someone to sweep up behind, a little bit more mobile than Partey, but it almost seems like he's gone more safe than maybe what he should have.
Completely agree with that. That's exactly what I thought was going to happen. I actually thought, you genius, we're being overrun. Yeah. Get the one bloke who could probably cover for the fact you want 2 10s. And he's never really wanted to do, well, he has, but he used Kai Havertz there. Like, come on, throw me a bone. Sorry, Sheroy, you're going to come in there.
No, I can't tell whether it's because the players have been scarred by getting caught out the way that you guys have described, whether the manager has been scarred by getting caught out the way you guys have described, or whether it's a bit of both. Because now, when I listen to Arteta after Inter, where I think we'd all agree that we weren't anywhere near our creative best, and for all the balls into the box, we didn't really look like we were going to fashion an incredible clear-cut chance in that second half, with everything that he said about Fulham and the fact that we only really conceded the one chance that they scored from, and everything that he led with after this Everton game. He was saying, well, we do absolutely everything. Look, the opponent creates nothing. And we get the ball into the box this many times. He's almost now gone safety first. And for anyone that was wondering whether that is his approach, he's now articulating it. And he's now seeking to justify this risk-averse approach by talking about how much we've cancelled the opponent out, notwithstanding the fact that this is an opponent that's been in a relegation battle for year after year. He's taking great pride in the fact that we've cancelled them out and not quite focusing upon the fact that we didn't look like scoring. And that, for me, is really perturbing, because I know I sound like a broken record. It was, in fact, the lack of goals in the tight games when it didn't necessarily look like the goal was going to come that I believe cost us the title last year. And if there's one thing that you can forgive a relatively young manager for and a novice manager for, it's making mistakes. But if there's one thing that you can't forgive at the highest level, is it's not learning from those mistakes. And this actually seems as though it's not necessarily not learning, it's almost a failure to identify. And that for me is what's really, really concerning. Now, I might be proven wrong. If he goes out and splurges 130 million in January on a striker with a ridiculous sort of chance conversion ratio, then he's identified it, fine. And people will say he may well have identified it, because he very often talks about, we didn't have that moment in the box. We didn't have that moment of magic in the box. He says it every so often, but he doesn't go on about that anywhere near as much as he talks about cancelling out the opponent.
I totally, utterly agree. And there's kind of like, look, the hardest thing in football is putting the ball in the back of the net. It's always been the hardest thing. So there's only so much I can praise that we do the easier bits of the game better. It's like, okay, fine. It's why, like, I will never really get onto Erling Haaland, because he scores at a rate that's, yes, his all-round game leaves a bit to be desired. We know that. But I promise, if he's in our team, I don't care, because he does the hardest bit so unbelievably well. And that's why with Aubameyang, it's quite funny, because Aubameyang and his kind of lack of kind of contribution to the overall game, that was there from when he arrived. That was happening when he was getting 25 league goals a season and things like that. That was kind of always a part of him. He was scoring goals. So I was like, fine. I don't really mind. The minute that left and you had to do something different for the team because you weren't getting the goals we needed, then I'm going to zone in on those other things a little bit more. So I'm with you. I think you're spot on, and I'm a bit disappointed in Arteta's ability to identify kind of what the team needed on last season. Again, and this is probably the 17th time I've said it in 2-3 weeks, and I'm so sorry, but I always want to reiterate this point for any new listeners or whatever. Who the hell am I to tell Mikel Arteta what he's not identifying, what he's not seeing? Come on. I'm really not that arrogant or stupid. But I do think every manager, even at the highest level, no matter how much you know about the game, can have a blind spot, can have an area that they recognize but maybe don't hold as important as maybe another. And ultimately, when it's a repetitive problem that fans not only are seeing now after the fact, but actually caught it before, then I think we have a right to come with a bit of chest and say, well, look, we said this was going to be a problem. And it's proving that way. The final thing, sorry, I'm ranting a little bit, but the final thing I wanted to say was we ended the game with kind of Timber left back, Partey right back, Ødegaard on Forneri like for like. I really think he could have ended the game with Timber, Saliba, Gabriel as a back three, because let's face it, Everton weren't getting players forward. Saka and Sterling as your wing backs, just get your two fastest players out wide, and quite frankly, Martinelli wasn't cutting it. You could have had Partey, Ødegaard, Waneri as your three to end the game. You could have Havertz and Jesus up top. He's played that system before to try chase a game. When we beat Wolves 2-1, when Lacazette, with that kind of own goal, won it late at the Emirates, that was the system he turned to, and he's done it before. So I was really disappointed with Arteta, not only for the subs, and actually the particular subs he made, but just the lack of bravery in them, Jack.
Yeah, I just want to throw it back quickly to the point you made about identifying a problem. The thing that's really concerned me is, if you remember when we lost to Bayern Munich last year, he came out and he said, look, we just don't have a difference maker. Like, we don't have that player that out of nowhere can go grab us a goal. And he said that when we exited the Champions League last season. And he said something very similar in his interview after this game. We just don't have that player that can pull something from nowhere. Like, you see Trent score a free kick for Liverpool. You see Foden last season put one in the top corner out of nowhere on the last day of the season. But we just don't have that. And it seems it's something he did identify, but then didn't almost look for in the window. So that's sort of where my concerns are coming from. It's that it is kind of being identified. It's just, is he not acting on it at the club, or is it a tactical switch? But
it's a bit, I'm thinking of an analogy, and I'm probably going to butcher it, but it's a bit like saying, like, I can't eat healthy because I haven't put enough like veg in my fridge or whatever, but you're out every night, drinking. Do you know what I mean? It's like, okay, there's have a good time. That's a good thing in life too. But at the same time, look after yourself. Like, and you need this in your life as well. And it's a bit like, what I'm trying to say is it's a shit analogy, but my point is, basically, use your resources more wisely. I'm not sure we needed 200 million or whatever it was to be spent on the defence. Now, to be fair, it's a bloody good defence. But the resources have been there. The money has been spent. And actually, this is where the ownership will always be a conversation. And we touched on it, Sheroy, recently, so I don't want to kind of open that big can of worms. But it's why my criticism will kind of only reach a certain point, because the resources have been there and he's chosen to spend this money this way. Ultimately, Sterling was alone, but £70 million went on another left back and on a central midfielder that he's not starting. Now, I liked those players when I thought that one was going to be fit and the other one was going to be a starter, but that's actually not been the case for either. Now, okay, you learn as you go on, but still £70 million was spent this summer. Actually, technically 30 because of the Raya deal too.
Yeah, and I look at the amount of money that was spent on the back line, and I know a lot of people will say the back line hasn't improved given how good it was last year, but we didn't have anywhere near the level of defensive injuries last year that we have had this year, and I can assure you that if we did, that back line would have been decimated last year. I think the acquisitions in terms of Calafiori and bringing Miles Lewis-Skelly through, I think they have really, really worked wonders, and of course, Timber being fit. You look at the midfield, we have been able, even though Marino hasn't started, we have been able to manage Partey's minutes a little bit more effectively. We have managed a little bit better when Rice has been injured. We have been able to sort of really negotiate Jorginho's playing time and use him in situations where the manager thinks he will impact the game, right? So I think that has positively impacted the balance. But what he's done to refresh the front three, which is an area that he's invested the least in before the acquisitions that I just mentioned, is allegedly go after a relatively young striker in Sesko. We wouldn't have had to break the bank for him, given what I heard. But then do nothing else until the end of the window, and then you bring in what now? Look, call it what you want. That was a panic deal. That was a deal to make up numbers. That's a deal where a lot of people are probably looking at it going, we probably should have just kept Reece. And I'm not having the whole, well, Chelsea are bearing the wages thing, because we're still bearing 6 figures of it. People used to sit here and piss and moan all the time about how much Eddie Nketiah was making. Sterling's making about the same, and he's doing a lot less.
Way less.
So it doesn't take profound analysis. Even if you look at title-winning Guardiola sides, if you look at really, really successful Fergie sides, whatever, even when they won, they strengthened across the pitch because there is a very, very important reason as to why you do. You're either ensuring that complacency doesn't set in, and you're bringing in someone with the hunger to win where others may not have because they've already won, or if you've gone once or twice and you haven't quite got there, and belief might just be starting to wane in particular areas of the pitch, you're bringing in someone who has that belief and can also reinvigorate it. That is what Calafiori's attitude screams of. Listen to him. Look at the way he plays. That is what Mourinho, his initial press conference when he came here, he said, look, they're so close, I'm coming in because I want to get them over the line. That is not what the Raheem Sterling signing does, particularly when he's not on the pitch. And that's why I think, I know it's a harsh word to use. I know I'm using it before the halfway mark of the Premier League campaign, but in all honesty, the way that we've managed this front line is nothing other than negligent.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, let's talk about how this could be addressed then. Now, some rumours, reports were saying that Arsenal, if there's an exceptional deal to be done, they would be ready to do it. But I mean, I think I'm paraphrasing, but I think the report was basically don't expect it. Which, look, I think also that's always the message Arsenal are going to put out there, to be fair, because they don't, especially when things look so bad, people aren't going to, the club aren't going to want everyone to know Arsenal are in the market, because that adds 30 million to any player they want. So, okay, fine. The message has got out there. I've got some names I'm going to reel off. We're not going to have to comment on each one. I'm just putting names that we've been linked with recently or that people have talked about. And then I want to see what you guys are thinking about other names or potentially these ones. I've been very loose links to Mateus Cunha, apparently. Xavi Simons, I know we've been linked with. João Pedro, I think, was talked about, but Liverpool really like him. Of course, there's the Nico Williams release clause is still there. Mohamed Kudus had some problems at West Ham not long ago. He's the one I really, really want. And with how West Ham are going, is that potentially doable? They spent a lot of money in the summer. Alexander Isak, probably only a summer deal, but again, a player that is in contract negotiations with Newcastle and feels like the one. Then Marcus Rashford left out the squad for Man United. A lot of people hate this. A lot of people in the comments of my last video, because I gave them a poll and the opportunity to decide what video they wanted. A lot of people said, don't even talk about Marcus Rashford. But I think actually we should, and I'll explain why in a little bit. But any names there that you guys like, or any you think we should be thinking about? Any that you think, that player can make a difference?
I mean, name specific for me, I'm still sort of evading me, but it's the left winger for me. I'm really like, when people are sitting and talking about strikers, I'm all in on a left winger for me. I don't think it should even be much of a conversation you have to pick between the two. Because my thing is, you might not be happy with Havertz, right? But he's got 10 goals already this season, which is a decent return. And he does a lot outside of the goals, if that makes sense. And I don't feel like he's missing chance after chance to the point where we need to get a striker. And my thing is, if you have someone who's going to do what he does off the ball, you need killers either side. I mean, you look at famous title-winning sides. You look at, Sterling and Sane. You look at Salah and Mane. You look at Robben and Ribéry. Like someone like a Mandzukic, just typical target man, but he had wingers either side to play in. Firmino dropping deep had wingers either side to play in. But with us, it just seems so lopsided that it almost has to go through Saka, that even if you do go and bring in another striker, you're going to have a similar issue where he might not do the dropping deep stuff and he might be an out-and-out finisher. But unless it's created down that right-hand side, changing a striker is not going to do a right lot. So for me, it's bringing a left winger. I mean, look, if it can be Nico Williams, great. But I think he prefers to stay in Spain. But yeah, I just think it's about finding a balance now of having a right and left that's equal rather than just trying to find another solution through the middle. Yeah,
I'm looking at this through the lens of a January window now, as opposed to a summer transfer window. Because I'm not a fan of this logic that if it's not the perfect signing, you don't bring them in a situation where now it's evident that I'd say almost every single one of those signings, bar maybe one or two, would improve our attacking options. And in many areas quite considerably. That's the way that I have to look at it in terms of January. Now, whether it's the left or the central striker, by the way, completely understand everything that you were just saying about the left-hand side. But I've now heard Arteta basically confess that when we're up against low blocks and it is very congested centrally, he is happy to just keep peppering the box. He said it after Fulham, and he said something similar after Everton. If you're going to be doing that, and if it's going to be constant crosses from the right, constant crosses from the left, I mean, he did exactly the same against Inter. Doing that when there isn't a target man 9 in the box that can put the ball in the back of the net is pointless. So for me, I know, well, I don't know him, but I feel like I know how he operates. And if there's one thing you can say about him, in amidst all the positives, is he's quite a stubborn bloke. If that's how he thinks he's going to break down the low block, I think that's what we're going to see for the vast majority of the season. And it's for that reason and that reason alone that I think we do need to prioritise the 9 at this stage. And I also say that because, yes, Martinelli and Trossard, we're not happy with either of them starting, and we see both as rotational options. I get that. But up front, it's Havertz or bust. Because it's difficult to say no disrespect, because what I'm about to say is actually quite disrespectful, and I don't mean it to be. But Gabriel Jesus doesn't add anything when he's on the football pitch anymore. He used to. He was. I'm sorry. It might sound unnecessarily direct, but unless and until I'm proven otherwise, because it's been a period of almost 12 months now that I felt this way, unless I'm proven otherwise, I feel as though we actually only have one person that we can start down the middle with any sort of hope, and that's Kai Havertz, which is why I think we desperately need another option there. Hopefully one that's actually better than Kai Havertz at what you would want a 9 to do in the traditional sense, and maybe you can use Kai Havertz as the rotational option. And if you need to save the left-hand side conversation for the summer, then you do that, because at least you have 2 players there, maybe 3 if you want to include Sterling. Use those, but we don't have the options down the middle. We just don't.
That's such a tricky debate. Look, they're not addressing both this window. I mean, hell, they should have addressed both.
I'm not sure they're addressing one. I'm not sure they're addressing one.
No, I totally agree. I actually have said for a while I don't think Arsenal will sign anybody. I think they're more likely going to tell Arteta to persist with Sterling and try to get something out of him. I'm not even joking. But if Arsenal could do one at a £50 million deal or whatever, Kai Havertz, sorry, distracted because really my window's open. I was wondering why it's chilly. I looked up and went, how long has that been? Anyway, Kai Havertz in the last 12 months has been closer to what we need than Martinelli has been. If you look at the last 12 months, in my opinion. And this is why I am not Kai Havertz's biggest fan. Far from it. And to prove it, I'll say I find him really tepid in his ball striking, bar that goal against Southampton. I find that for his frame, yes, sometimes he can hold up the ball brilliantly, but actually I don't think he dominates enough. But he can. I've seen he can do it, which is almost reaffirms my point that he could do it more. I don't think he often wants to grab the game by scruff of the neck, and I don't think he really imposes himself as a character and leads the line. I don't think he's got that real proper goal threat. But I think he can be someone who is on a wavelength tactically with all the players. I do think actually more often than not we don't have to think about the finish. Bam, he does get it right. I think he can sniff where a goal's going to come from. And I think he can be someone that can actually, everyone can play off quite well. Martinelli from 2 seasons ago, for me, was the best, if not one of the best left wingers in the Premier League. I thought we were going to have to do really well to keep him. But now I'm looking, it's just been so long. And I don't even see a player who's just struggling from a technical and tactical perspective, because the guy works really, really hard. And what I've been praising for all seasons is his work rate and his commitment to the team and always trying to do the right things. And I believe that the good will come if you just keep doing the selfless work. But actually, I almost think he looks frustrated now. I think he looks petulant. I think he looks like he's kind of sick of it, like how much he's putting into the game and how little he's actually getting back from it. And I know that feels a little bit like, well, the game doesn't owe you anything, but sometimes, it can get a little bit like that. And I don't know. I just think after all this waffling, my point is that I would add a left winger because it's about now. Now, maybe in the summer, when you readdress a few things, you actually can unlock a better Martinelli than you can Havertz. And Martinelli's high at Arsenal is higher than Havertz is high, in my opinion. But addressing it now, I think you do a better job getting a left winger in and having Havertz as your 9, I think.
Maybe.
Great change.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a hot take for me, sorry, but it's like, I think this is the same Martinelli that we've always seen. I don't know whether that's sort of an unpopular opinion, but I feel like his biggest strengths have now become his biggest weaknesses. Like, he was always raw and direct and great in transition. And 2 years ago, when we were in our first title race and teams didn't respect Arsenal, Everton would come to the Emirates and Ashley Young would bomb forward and then we'd hit them in transition, head down, sprint at the goal, and he either gets a tap in or Saka does some hard work and he arrives at the back post. I feel like we've got the same Martinelli, but now teams are respecting Arsenal. They come into the Emirates and saying, oh, we're just going to sit. So Martinelli's still going to get the ball to feet, but he's now not in transition one-on-one against Ashley Young. He's now with Young and Tarkowski and Idrissa Gueye in front of him. And he's going to have to actually use some tactical nous to try and break through this. So I almost feel like that rawness and that directness is now almost playing against him, whereas before it was you can't defend this guy, because whereas like a Grealish or someone's going to take the ball down and look up and try and find the pass, whereas Martinelli's just gone. Whereas I almost feel like now that's sort of been figured out and now we're getting respected. It's almost the same guy, but just different game.
Sort of see what you're saying. I'm not sure if I agree, but it's a very interesting way of looking at it.
I hear that, but how often? Because I understand that teams and defences are respecting Arsenal, but I don't think they're respecting Martinelli. Because I've been able to watch a lot of games now where I've looked at Martinelli in acres of space, and even when he gets the ball to feet, he's still basically one-on-one. They don't fear him the same way they fear the opposite flank, quite rightly. And when we're looking, if I could show you the footage, I'd bring it up now. But when he had Young in front of him, you could see that if he beat Young, there was acres of space. And on the odd occasion that I've seen Martinelli beat a player this year, one of my fondest memories of Martinelli, aside from the obvious, the Chelsea goal from the halfway line where he takes it all the way down, one of my favourite things about Martinelli is when he got in behind, it was a darting run into the box, basically right along the goal line, and you're thinking, is he going to get clipped? Is it going to be a pen? Is he going to get a corner? Is he going to get the cross in? I can't remember the last time I saw him make that run. Yeah. I just cannot remember the last time I saw him be that adventurous. And all this brings me... I may focus on Arteta's interviews too much, right? But I'm a big fan of language, and I think particularly people like him, I don't think they say anything without intent behind most sentences. I think the words that they choose quite carefully. Does a little segment for Sky Sports, and he says the same sort of thing when people are talking about Kieran Tierney. I think this was before our midweek game against Monaco. And he says, look, there are three things with certain players. He says, one of them is, do they have the ability to do something? The other is, do they want to do it? And the third is, do they understand it? And I can't help but think that he is speaking about now someone like Martinelli in this team. I don't know whether it's the ability. I don't know whether it's the want. I don't know which of those it is. But I think that's it. And if I'm looking at the players that he just isn't picking, and we sit there and we go, well, why on earth is he not picking these players? Maybe it is someone like a Raheem Sterling. I feel as though they're falling behind on one of those three things. And if he sees that, then it sounds like it could be the beginning of the end for some of these players.
Fair. I said I wanted to chat about Rashford a little bit just because I needed a video on him. And now we know he's been left out the Man United squad. And look, I think a really, really good point was made by someone on Twitter, and I really wish I could credit it, but it was just a tweet I saw and I sort of moved on, and I realised quite late I wanted to bring up in this podcast. The tweet was basically saying, why don't we ever sign forwards when they're on the up? You know, why don't we ever go and sign a player who Sadio Mane was going from strength to strength at Southampton, and Salah was going from strength to strength at Fiorentina and then Rome before he went to Liverpool. And he's so right. I mean, Kai Havertz came in as a Chelsea flop. That's how they saw him. Gabby Jesus wasn't wanted anymore by Man City. Trossard, to be fair, was playing brilliantly at Brighton, but actually wasn't playing the final few games, and there was a breakup in the relationship there. Raheem Sterling not wanted by Chelsea, because that's a very fair point. We're not actually picking up forwards that are on an upward trajectory, so we kind of wonder why actually maybe they're not necessarily on an upward trajectory at Arsenal. Rashford, unfortunately, fits that bill, and so for that reason, I'll say it right now, I wouldn't sign him. However, how many players on the market have that pace? That ability, I kind of don't like the term ball striking, but basically that ability to, with very little, leather it. Top corner, from distance, out of very little, short backlift, basically get a shot at goal that genuinely asks a question, turn a half chance into a goal. Someone who has got that kind of raw power, someone who has that ability to carry, to destroy a fullback with and without the ball. So either they're putting behind or they're giving the ball and they're running at them. Someone who's as good on the touchline and is good on the inside pockets, who's experienced in this league, who has a point to prove, who's done it for England. I still, for everything I've just said, wouldn't have him. But my word, like with the state of our front line and the way Arteta's worked with wingers, why does he feel like the perfect profile for Mikel?
Let me put it another way. I'm gonna ask you the same question, but another way.
Yeah.
If I told you that you could have £1 million a week in player wages for your front line, and you spent it on Raheem Sterling, Kai Havertz, Gabby Jesus, and Marcus Rashford, would you take it?
And thanks for tuning into the podcast, guys. Really enjoyed this one.
Doing the maths, we're paying 100 grand a week for Sterling. I think Jesus is on around $250,000.
Yeah,
I think Kai Havertz is on upwards of that, and I think Rashford will want something in the region of the 300 mark himself. So you are looking at around £1 million a week. And I mean, I'm sorry, but
it's disastrous. It's awful. You're right,
and you're not going to recoup any of that money. You're not going to recoup any of it, whether it's signing fee, whatever it is, because we're not selling. Even if we own Sterling, we wouldn't make a profit on him. We're definitely not making a profit on Jesus. It would definitely be Rashford's last big move, and you wouldn't make money on him. And is anyone going to pay more than 65 million for Kai Havertz going forward? So the whole thing is loss making and risk taking. We're not in a position where we can take a risk with the front line anymore, for exactly the reason that you just said. We have not bought a coveted frontline player in Arteta's tenure. We have not really, in all honesty, we haven't even had to scrap for someone that we wanted to buy in the front line because there hasn't really been any competition for these signings. That is not the type of player that's going to advance things. The players that we wanted that went elsewhere. If you're looking at Bruno at Newcastle, if you're looking at Isak at Newcastle, there were clubs that were in for them. My God, there were clubs that were in for them. Any player worth their salt, there'll be clubs that are in for them. If we take that level of financial risk now, having done everything that we've needed to do to clear the wage bill, that move, and I say this with ultimate conviction, that would be the sword that Arteta falls on.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I was on your side anyway, but that's only sort of dragged me further to it. But Jack,
I feel like such a dick. I began this by saying we need to have some energy because otherwise this is going to be such a dull listen. And I've just gone and done that. But I'm sorry, that's just the way I feel about it.
I found this quite interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, Jack, what do you make of it? Because of course the attitude thing is another thing. And look, I say that very loosely. Like this is Rashford's done a lot of good with his kind of profile and who he is. There's absolutely no question about it. And actually, like in a lot of ways, carried himself like an ultimate professional. But when you hear of the rumours and the reasons why maybe he wasn't included in the squad, there is something about Rashford that you just kind of question at times when it comes to has the weight of Manchester United got a bit too much? Is he kind of done? I don't know. And people wonder whether you want that at Arsenal. That's the murmurs and conversations. I don't pass that as comment. I pass that as question that has been floated around. But what do you make of the potential of that kind of signing?
Yeah, I mean, everything you said about his quality and literally what we were talking about earlier of who can pull something from nothing. You've only got to look at the last two games that Man United came to the Emirates, before this time. You've got last season, we're all over them. He puts them 1-0 up by firing one in the top corner. The year before, he puts them 1-0 up by picking the ball up and firing one in the bottom corner. So he's someone that can do that. But like you say, it's the attitude issues for me. You know, everything we've heard about the reasons why he's not part of United's plans going forward, reportedly. But it's sort of that fantasy world, isn't it? Of is he maybe, getting a bit lax? He's been through the different managers over and over again. He's living up in Manchester with a change of scenery, get away from certain people, get into London, find your love for football again.
And he's been treated badly by the media. I do think we should say that. Things like, he a birthday party and all the reports around it. Like, he's probably also a little bit fed up of some of the coverage around all that at times. But anyway, carry on.
Yeah, just sort of. Is it basically I've fallen out of love with football a little bit. I've been at United for ages. I'm sort of the face of the franchise. A fresh start and a fresh city with a new manager would be great for me. Or is it a case of these are just personality traits that aren't necessarily bad, but just not great for a footballer? But I'm sort of trying not to live in that fantasy world of we can save you because we said we could save Sterling. We tried to save Havertz. I was not far off convinced we were going to make a move for Sancho at some point. And I think, like Sheroy was saying, just getting away from that we can save you signing or the strikers on the decline.
Sancho's an example of the other way. Like, it's only a loan, and he hasn't exactly started every week for Chelsea, but he's more than playing his part, scoring a big goal in a big game. Starting that big game was a big call in the first place for a team that are massively on the up and are clear of us in the table right now. So there are examples of it. And, Sancho and his attitude was questioned by Ten Hag, and a lot of Man United fans had Ten Hag's back on that. Some had Sancho's. And it was an example of one that aged well for the player.
Yeah, I mean, one that came out today that's maybe different is I saw Vlahovic brought up again, and I don't know whether that's the crush you used to have a couple of years ago is back on the market, sort of that sort of thing, or whether it is actually the profile we need. But I feel like the whole thing with him was that he didn't want to join because we weren't quite at the level sort of 2-3 years ago, whereas now I don't know if that's something you'd revisit or...
Look, I'm with Sheroy, like at least Vlahovic, I mean... You'll know more than me, Chad, but his numbers have still been good at Juve, right? I mean, this isn't a player who's been a flop by any means there. So I think that's probably still a player that, I'd quite like to take the risk. But I think the point there, and again, I wish I could credit the tweet of signing players on the up. I mean, I think that's got to be a big thing. And what's so interesting about the forward line is it's the only position where he's really done it. Everywhere else, Arteta has been so ahead of the curve on players whose stocks were going up, only he saw the potential. David Raya, everyone thought he was a good goalkeeper in the Premier League, but no one thought he was this good. Ben White, everyone thought, really good ball-playing centre-back. No one thought he'd be this good. Jurriën Timber, Declan Rice, Gabriel Magalhaes, so many of those players, he's kind of seen what's to come. Bukayo Saka, I didn't think Bukayo Saka would get to this level. I thought Bukayo Saka would be a good / very good player for us when he came through. But I didn't think he would be, putting himself in terms of the numbers in a conversation where you go, he might end up an Arsenal legend and he might end up our greatest ever right winger. I didn't think he'd get to that conversation. So he's been able to take people on the up and just fire their trajectory forward. And you could say, look, has he reversed the trajectory for Kai Havertz? Of course he has. Kai Havertz has proven himself a much better footballer than I expected. I don't see, and I'm doing the Turkish line, but I don't see the highest paid player in the club there. I don't see a £65 million striker. That's the only thing. So I don't know. This January window is going to be very interesting for Mikel. Let's speed round. Do we think we'll sign a player? To know from Jack, sure.
Unfortunately not.
Go to any AFTV show I've ever done in a January. I always say yes, and I'm always wrong. And I'm going to do the same again this year. I believe that we will. And we're going to do this. I always say we will. Excuse me. And I'm always wrong because I'm a sucker. Even if we're going through a bad patch of form, I predict a win, mate. Even if we don't look like we're going to sign someone, I still feel like we do. Call it copium, call it false optimism, call it whatever you want. I just think that, or I hope that Arteta can see all of the good work that he's done slowly undoing itself, certain elements of the fan base turning, certain things that he feels we ought to win, seeming as though they might be beyond reach. And he's going to have to go upstairs and keep banging down doors until he gets what he wants.
All right, let's spend the last 10 minutes then doing this, right? We'll talk a bit about the Carabao Cup and the opportunity. Kind of wish, to be fair, I mean, I've been rambling on, but I kind of wish actually we sort of really dug into the fact that, you know, there's still so much to play for Arsenal this season. And I know people are tired of it because I said it after Newcastle, I said it after Chelsea, I said it after Fulham, now saying after Everton. And there's only so many times you can keep hearing, there's so much to play for before you're like, mate, we're shit. And we're not. We're third in the table. Man City look a lot worse. That doesn't mean we should be happy with what we are, but, you know, others are going through things as well. And this Carabao Cup game's coming on, which I think is a really refreshing game for us because I think it's one we actually all really, really want to win, but it's in a different competition. I think we probably all are carrying, weirdly, a little bit more hope for this one than we are in the league right now, for sure. It's a quarter-final. You know you're down to the last four if you get that win at home against Palace. What do I want to ask? I want to ask, have you seen Forever Arsenal yet, Sheroy? Have you caught up on it?
Yeah.
Did I misrepresent you when I was explaining what you were saying about the process? And I was trying to regurgitate what you said on the Goonerverse podcast about if we don't win the title and we actually fall a little bit more further than we expected, but we win a trophy, at least the process can kind of feel like in some way it's still carrying on. Without a trophy, it might feel like it's failed. I mean, if that's true, then Wednesday night is huge.
Yeah, and I'm so annoyed because before I agreed to the date, I didn't check the fixtures, and Wednesday night is my work Christmas party. So it's going to be the first game this season that I can't watch.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, Wednesday night is huge. The FA Cup game is huge, and the Champions League is huge. And that's not me saying all of the games that we have left in the Premier League aren't huge either. But for this season, the Carabao Cup has taken on more importance than it has done previously because it may have been the case that we could say, I'm not going to use the bigger fish to fry expression, but I am going to say that we may well have felt as though at that stage of the development, we didn't have a squad to compete on all fronts, nor should we have at that stage. But when you're in your fifth full season, you should have. So you can't be tossing trophies away left, right and centre. And it does look like the Premier League is slowly but surely looking as though it's out of reach. So it's massive. Yeah. What I was saying about elements of the fan base maybe slipping away and the narrative changing, I don't want to know what it would be like if we went out at home to Crystal Palace in this trophy at this stage of the season. I honestly think it could get quite ugly. Yeah, and that's what another reason why I think it's huge.
Yeah, I agree. Jack, come in on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's massive. I think one of my biggest criticisms of Arteta has been that we've not maybe taken these cups seriously. And like you were saying a minute ago about maybe not having this squad to compete on all fronts, but I'll use Liverpool as an example. When they couldn't quite topple City in the league, what did they do? They went out, they picked up a Champions League, Carabao Cup, FA Cup. They just became a winning team. They turned Salah into a trophy-winning winger and all these other players. They bred winning. And eventually they got the crown that they were after the whole time. And it's just not something we've done. You know, we're a great team, but not a winning team. And I think that's the next step. If you can't go straight to title-winning team, can we just be Arsenal the winning team and then go from there? So yeah, Wednesday's huge for me. If we can, especially with it being, is it a late January final, early Feb? It's a great time to win something, get that massive boost for whatever the run-in may hold.
And also, it's so hard to measure these things, right? Because there's no actual, it's not a real thing. It's all in our brains. But if Arsenal finished 6th or 7th and won the FA Cup, like, we have major problems. And you enjoy the day, but there's major problems. That's how Man United fans are talking a lot about it. But if we finish 2nd, dare I say 3rd, but we win the FA Cup, we win the FA Cup and a Carabao Cup or something, you still got to do the reflecting. What went wrong in the Premier League? Why you fell so far off? But I promise you, that season's going to be full of some memories. Like it's the trophies and the year that are plastered around the Emirates Stadium. Like, it's the trophies that are read out at the end of a manager's tenure, and he won blah blah blah, this and this and this, and the players look back and they go, man, look at my trophy cabinet. Unless you are, and I could easily banter Tottenham fans, right? But unless you're Harry Kane, who quite literally is like breaking goal scoring records, then you got something else tangible there for all that work and the level you got to outside of trophies. But Arsenal players can't really depend on that. Like, nor can Arteta. They've got to be lifting silverware. That Liverpool example is amazing. Jurgen Klopp can be framed in two ways. And sure, I think you made this point as well recently. In 7-8 years, he won the Premier League once with one of the best one of the best teams I've seen in the Premier League. He won it once. Oh, okay. Or he won a Premier League. He won 2 Carabao Cups. He won a Champions League. He won a Club World Cup. He won a Super Cup. He won an FA Cup. He won a Community Shield. Shamelessly putting the Community Shield in there. And my word, does that look like, a body of work for 7-8 years in a job? Come on. And is anyone begrudging him that? Is anyone going, it's only one Champions League or one Premier League? No, they're going, that's unbelievable. But I mean, everything else as well almost took on more importance because he delivered the big ones. Now, I think Arteta needs to seriously he needs to take them all seriously for me.
And I think he knows that. I do think he knows that.
Do you? I don't know if he does.
I think this year he does. I don't think he always has.
Premier League. I think he's obsessed by it.
I don't think he always has, but I think this year he knows that. I think this year he knows that he wants to win everything. He has to win everything. And that's why he does talk about it a bit more. It's not just, oh no, I want to win the Premier League. And that might be because he's feeling the pressure ramped up. That might be because he's had a bit of time to reflect and go, well, actually, I have been here for quite a while. And that FA Cup does seem like a distant memory. But I say that, this is going to sound ridiculous. And a lot of people probably won't like the fact that I'm saying this, but I actually like the guy. I want him to do well. Like, just as a bloke.
Hey, Mikel.
Yeah.
Same. Yeah.
Just as a bloke, I want him to be successful, notwithstanding the fact that he's the Arsenal manager. Now, the fact that he's the Arsenal manager makes me really want him to do well. But I actually think he's probably one of the most hardworking managers out there. I think he's one of the people that looks at the game or tries to look at the game in more depth than the vast majority of people. I think he's one of those guys that takes great pride in the way in which he's transformed this club. I think he's a guy that loves his players. I think he's a guy that really wants his players to succeed. I think he's a guy that genuinely does have a connection with the fan base. For all of those things, I want that to materialize into success for him. And obviously, I want it to materialize into success for this club, right? A lot of people be like, why do you care about the manager succeeding? It should all be about Arsenal. But I want them both.
Sure. No, I totally agree. I mean, that's how I felt. I mean, I only ever knew Arsene Wenger and Arsenal together, for however many years I was a fan. So I always said when he left, I was like, look, wherever he goes, I will be paying close attention. Now, he never did. But you're right. Like, we're not. It's the football club first. Yeah. But also, I want Saka and Saliba to lift these trophies with us. I want Erdegaard to be the captain who does it, because you just grow attachments to these people. So we're going to give you such good times. For what it's worth, to round off this pod, I think we're going to. I don't think we're going to win the league. I actually didn't say that. I said that at the start of the season we weren't going to. When we drew at City, we did a podcast, and I thought, okay.
Me too.
But it just fell away. So, yeah. I thought maybe we were doing enough to overcome the shortcomings in a different way. We weren't. My original fears from the start of the season are proving right to a degree. I didn't think Liverpool, though, would be the ones leading the way. Fair play to them. They've been brilliant. So I look at it and I go, I don't think we'll win the Premier League, and that will come with its questions, and rightly so. But I do think we're going to lift some silverware. I'm weirdly hopeful of more than one. And where the hell is this delusion coming from? We haven't won one for 4 or 5 years. But I think we can be a surprise in the Champions League. Yes, we've never won it for rivals in the I know, okay, but we can be a surprise. We've 95% done the job in that competition, so it's February, March that we need to get our act together for. And we're in the Carabao Cup quarters. Hopefully, we go through. We should. That's the expectation. And look, the FA Cup, it's our competition. No one's done it more than us. So I think we can make this an extremely successful season still, in one where we will still have learned a lot that hopefully Arteta can then go and address come the summer of 2025. But I'll only be patient in that way if the silverwares come.
Just to throw a hypothetical at you as well. Say Tottenham go through. Are you wanting them in a 2-leg semi, or are you wanting them in the final? I haven't been tossing and turning myself. Would I rather take Tottenham home and away and then probably Liverpool in the final, or would I rather get Anfield out the way in the semis and then have that all or nothing against Spurs for their first trophy in 15 years?
I actually think United might win that one, but look, call me a complete coward, but a final against them, oh God, that it just be too that. What do you think, Sheroy?
I don't want to go. I don't want to go to Anfield. I was leaning towards the final against them, and the same way you were thinking about the.
Why is it necessarily one of them? Liverpool go to Southampton, so they're through.
Yeah.
Man United, and then who else? There's another quarters. No,
Chelsea.
Are Newcastle still in?
Chelsea are out. So
Newcastle. Yeah, Newcastle. Yeah, you're right. So
I think Newcastle have a relatively easy draw. Sorry, I was just operating on Jack's hypothetical.
Newcastle, Brentford at home.
Okay, Brentford not bad.
Yeah, on the hypothetical. Go on, yeah.
Yeah, so my assumption is that just at some point, if we are going to win it, there's going to be a Tottenham or a Liverpool in there somewhere.
Yeah, I'd rather not go to Anfield, and I'd rather be the guy that can look at the Tottenham fan and go, you had a chance to win a trophy, you came up against us in the final, and we were the ones that said no. I'd love it. I'd absolutely love it.
From a set piece as well, please.
Look at the way James is looking at me. Look at the way he's looking at me. He's thinking, why did you just say that on camera?
I think we can go to Anfield and do something, because we have done for the last few years, actually. I think, in fact, we're unbeaten in our last 3 trips to Anfield, having drawn there in the 21-22 season in the Carabao Cup away from home. So I would rather... Oh, no, hold on. But that's me saying that I would want Tottenham in the final. Yeah. I don't want that. Okay, no, sorry. Tottenham home and away, semi-final. And then if they beat us, pray that the other team win it in the final. 3 shots at it. I sound like I'm more interested in denying Spurs than I am.
That's exactly what you're more interested in. That's exactly what you're more interested in.
Okay. This is an incredibly emotional fan base. What happens if we lose a cup final to Tottenham? I'm fleeing the country. Right? Who's booking the flight with me? I'm leaving.
When was the last time they won a cup final?
This is the kind of jinx. Have you learned nothing from the clips this weekend, Sheroy?
It's just a fact. It's just a fact.
Let's get past Palace and then we'll see. We'll have that debate. We'll see the draw. In fact, I might do a live reaction to the draw here on the Goonerverse, people. So look out for that if we go through, of course. Which I believe. Actually, will the draw even be Wednesday night? It'll be Thursday night, won't it? Because Man United are playing Spurs then. I'll figure that out. Leave that to me, people. None of you need to worry about that. All right, we'll leave it there, everyone. Actually, no, quick, hands up. Are Arsenal winning a trophy this season? 3, 2, 1. Hey, look at that. We've been that positive.
You have to believe, man. You have to believe.
You love to see it. You love to see it. Do you guys want to say which one? Or
FA Cup, our trophy. 2.
You think FA and Carabao? So I was going to say the same. But I hate myself because where the hell is this coming from? Just hate. But Sheroy, if we do it, there's a special pod. That would be fun. A little domestic double, eh?
Wouldn't mind that getting clipped up if I'm right. I would not mind that getting clipped up if I'm right. Trust me.
If you're right.
Yeah.
Look, everyone. I know some people are watching go, oh my God, these guys. Don't take us too seriously. Having a bit of fun, but I'm with Sheroy. I think we still can do something this season. I still think we will. And hey, a couple wins at Wembley wouldn't be bad. Jack, you have been sensational, mate. Thank you so much for joining us. I really, really enjoyed having you on, man.
I appreciate you having me on.
No, always welcome, always welcome. By the way, where can everyone find you? I know the link will be in the description below, but tell them about your TikTok as well.
I think it's just Jack Davenport 34 is the TikTok. That's all you'll find for me at the minute. So yeah, if anyone has a minute to check us out, I appreciate it.
You love to see it. And Sheroy, of course, Sheroy's voice. They're all subbed though, aren't they?
I'd like to think so. But honestly, it was good. It was good sitting down and speaking to you for an hour or so, Jack, because every time I see you, it's at the studio and it's in passing, and I never get to sit down and actually just sort of break it down with you. So thank you. And I'm pretty sure the viewers are sort of getting sick of just seeing me talking to James for an hour. So they're probably glad there's been a guest.
No, you're not wrong about that. So there we go. We were going to have Frank with us, just letting the viewers know. Obviously, Frank has been on AFTV, but he had a last minute change of plans. We will get Frank soon, so look forward to him as well. Deluded Gooner, really keen to jump on. We've spoken to him, FK from Latte Firm. So there are lots of guests still that we're looking forward to inviting onto the podcast. So keep an eye out. We had, as we mentioned in the last pod, a lot of changes with the Goonerverse recently, but we're back in action. Christmas period is always a little bit difficult. In fact, next week is Christmas week, sure. So we need to make a plan for When we'll figure something out. We'll do something fun. Maybe we'll do like a fun Christmas special or something. We'll figure that out. But yeah, big thanks to everyone. YouTube in class, as always. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet, everyone. And we'll catch you all in a bit. Really hope you've enjoyed another episode of the Goonerverse podcast with Arsenal fans from around the Arsenal world giving their amazing thoughts. A big thanks to our guest today. If you do want to follow this podcast on the go, you can. It's available on podcast platforms as well. Join us next week where we'll get more Arsenal fans to talk all things Arsenal. A big thank you again.